What we have been witnessing over the last decade and a half in Bangladesh is basically a regression of democracy. I would say this regression, the backsliding practically started in 2011 when the constitution was amended and the caretaker provision was scrapped from the constitution. The caretaker government provision was there, which enabled at least four successful free, fair election in 1991, 96, 2001, and 2008. However, since then, we have seen this process of democratic backsliding, because with this removal of this provision, practically it put the election process at the hands of the incumbent, that is Awami League and Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. And if you look at since then, particularly if you look at 2014 election, since then this regression, democratic backsliding or autocratization, however you put it, intensified, very much intensified. The democracy indices, if you look at these international organizations, that you'd be able to figure out the extent of it. Take, for example, Freedom House, which published its report recently. Overall democracy score was 2009 when Sheikh Hasina came into power, was 52. In 2023, the report that just came out tells us that it is 40. So you can see this regression. If you look at the Polity5 data, what do we see? In 2009, it was positive 5. In 2018, up to until 2018, they have data, it became -6. So you can understand that how much regression has taken place. Bartleman's Transformation Index calls Bangladesh as a moderate autocracy. Varieties of Democracy Institute call it electoral autocracy. So you can get this idea that we have seen. Media freedom has practically dwindled, if you look at the scores. Again, in, say, for example, in 2011, 2012, at that point, it was around 54, 57. Last year, it came down to 35.31, almost half, or at least close to half. So also we have seen the extrajudicial killings that has become a hallmark of these past 10 years or decade, as you can understand, which led the United States to impose sanctions on Rapid Action Battalion. And we have seen this case of extrajudicial killing. More than 3,000, perhaps more than 3,500 people have become victims. So all things considered, what I see is the Bangladesh situation since 2009, particularly since 2011. But if you want to put a date on it, I would say the process which led to 2014 election. And then we have seen 3 consecutive elections, which the last election, even before the election took place, we knew the result, right? You and I, everyone knew the result. Guardian called it phony because that is what it is. Previous election at one point, I recall the economists called it transparently fraudulent. I mean, all these things indicate that the democracy is in a slippery slope. I personally, at this point, what I see is a personalistic autocracy. That is what it is. So that is the temper of situation with the democracy in Bangladesh. It is an environment of fear, as a matter of fact, and that is what I have described in my other words is the culture of fear, because the civil society has been practically decimated. The media, in 2 ways, it has been controlled through legal measures, for example, Digital Security Act, which now is called Cyber Security Act, but also through other extra legal measures that we have seen. Fear is there because of this extrajudicial killing. Fear is there because of this enforced disappearance. Fear is there that because of the Digital Security Act, anyone can actually go to a police station and file a case, and then you'd be prosecuted, Nowadays, the Digital Security Act has been pushed aside, but those people, according to government numbers, 7,000 cases have been filed. So On an average, each case has 3 individuals accused. So 21,000 people are going through this process. Now, so they have changed the name only. So this is the fear. And also what is happening is practically leading to this election. What was expected or thought that the opposition would be able to put a resistance to it, in a sense. They tried. I mean, of course, there are other issues there, but most important thing is that how the state machineries have been used to persecute people is very worrying. Judiciary has been weaponized, leading to the election. And I followed it and I wrote about it, in a period of what? Between 28th of October and 28th of December, basically 2 months. 1,500 opposition leaders and activists have been convicted on charges. Many of them are frivolous, is an understatement. So all these things create a situation wherein it is very difficult to speak out, when there is lack of a space, a democratic space to speak out, lack of any kind of independent media, or those which are there are now under immense pressure. So this is the kind of thing. We don't see any kind of outburst at this point. Some people say, why there is no outburst? There's no outburst because, first of all, this is the fear thing. The second thing is, of course, what is next? I mean, how the opposition would actually reorganize itself and get to the street. Violence and political conflict and confrontation has been an integral part of Bangladeshi politics. Unfortunately, but that's the fact of life. Bangladesh emerged through the violence. We need to understand the war of independence was where millions of people had died and all sorts of things. But what happened is this, that the culture, political culture itself, in the absence of democratic institutions, it is the street which became the place where you make the decision. And each time what we have seen since 72, as a matter of fact, since 72, we have seen, since immediately after independence, we have seen that, political scores are settled on the street rather than on the parliament, because the institutions are not there. Parliament has not operated. So, I recall a study that was conducted a few years ago, which covered between 2002 and 2013. And the study was telling us that about 126,000 people have been wounded, and about 2,400 people have been died between 2002 and 2013.
A large number.
Yes, it's a huge number. And who actually perpetrated? Political parties, BNP did about 24%. 26% to be precise. Awami League did 24%. But when we talk about this political violence, one thing in case of Bangladesh, and possibly it is true for South Asia, all other South Asian countries, what role state has played. Right. As a matter of fact, in the same study, what is being found, 52% cases of violence was perpetrated by the police and law enforcement agencies. The arbitrary arrest, detention, use of lethal, kind of weapons and all sorts of things that we have seen. So it is part of the thing. And you are referring to the violence going into this last election, that is 2024. Most of this violence were perpetrated by the pro-government people because nobody else was there, as a matter of fact. They put out these so-called independent candidates. Then they're members of the Awami League. 62 seats that they have won, 59 of them actually belong to the political party. Prime Minister, after the election, said, they are my left hand, they are my right hand. I mean, so it is between them. It is the ruling party activists. On the other hand, we have seen the state machinery being used in such a fashion, whether it is Rapid Action Battalion, whether it is Border Guards Bangladesh, whether it is police, whether it is the special branch, all sorts of things. But that's why when we talk about this culture, we need to be, somehow take, cognizant of the state's role, how states and institutions are used. And I'm sure, I mean, it's not, Bangladesh is not unique in that sense. What we have seen in case of Pakistan is exactly the same thing, years in, years out, We have seen in case of India, the similar thing, right? And we keep on seeing this kind of thing. So the violence, the way we see it, needs to be looked into at the context of the political culture and in my understanding, is the state as an instrument of the ruling party, or everywhere. I mean, who is in power is to a certain extent becomes insignificant in this regard. So that's why we need to be cautious about how we paint it, whether we are exonerating the state from doing this and putting everything on the political parties as if they are the ones they are doing it only. I would say three things.
Mm-hmm.
First and foremost is the legitimacy crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Because as we have mentioned, as we know, as everyone who have observed Bangladesh election, no, this is not a popular mandate. This is not a mandate by any means. The electoral process itself was so much manipulated and engineered. You put up your people as an independent candidate, and then you try to break the opposition. You bring, people who have defected, creates King's Party, all sorts of machination that we have seen. Actually, this created a moral legitimacy crisis. The ruling party have been facing the moral legitimacy crisis since 2014. 10 years later, another election has not given any kind of benefit to them. That's why the first challenge for them is the moral legitimacy crisis.
Right.
Second thing is definitely the economic crisis. Because over the last decade, Awami League insisted that it is the development, right? Yes, there has been economic growth, but also what we don't talk about is the disparity that has increased, remarkable disparity, but also most importantly, that a crony capitalism has emerged, wherein we have seen that, those who are connected to the government have benefited immensely, whether it is in the energy sector. At least even government account says that 12 to 13% of bank loan is defaulted, which means these are practically non-performing loans, which means these are gone. IMF account is exactly the double of it. So can you imagine 20%, and then dwindling foreign reserves that we have seen? Inflation has gone up. Price hike as we speak. There has been energy price hike again through the government. So second is economic crisis. The third is the re-establishing the party discipline, if there is any, because the last election, the way they wanted to do it, as if everyone has participated, that's why they created this independent. Now the party is split in the middle, practically, fragmented into many things. How they're going to bring it back? Already over the years, this party has become so dependent on civil administration or law enforcement agencies. That party was weakening at its core. Now with this election, they have created, many parties within under the name of Awami League. How they're going to bring it back? These are the challenges that the ruling party will have to face. One challenging part is that the reset that you were talking about with the United States. US has described this election as not free and fair. Same with the United Kingdom, Canada, and European Union. US delegation came, they talked about it, given the regional security dimension, they want to continue, and that is what United States did. We can have criticism of the United States, how they have regressed from their previous position, whether it is a reset, whether it is a reversal, that is a different question. But the point with respect to Bangladesh, that on the one hand, this is a challenge for them, that it is not only the formal relationship with the United States, because the United States plays a very significant role in Bangladesh economy with respect to the market, with respect to foreign direct investment and so on. But also the question is where the government's focus would be, given its close relationship with India. And in many cases, it is not to exaggerate. I mean, it is my understanding that that India wanted to see Sheikh Hasina in power because the relationship, which I would describe as a very unequal relationship, Bangladesh has provided too much in exchange of what they have received from India. Now, India has become a critical player in Bangladeshi domestic politics and its foreign affairs. But China's assertive policy we have seen. despite the fact that India has enormous influence since 2009 over this government. China has actually made a serious inroad. So where do they fit these things? For economic reasons, I mean, India doesn't have a big pocket. We know that for sure. China has. But on the other hand, China doesn't provide money willy-nilly. They have their political agenda, right? Throughout this Indo-Pacific region, particularly in South Asia. Add to this complexity is Myanmar. What is happening at the doorstep?
Right.
Arakan province. Whose interest Bangladesh is going to serve? Bangladesh's only interest would be to see that the regime doesn't have that kind of influence in Arakan, which might mean Arakan army should win. India doesn't want it for understandable reason, because this is going to jeopardize its security and business. China is playing both hands, both sides, Arakan army as well as the regime. So these are the complex situations that this regime is going to face. And my understanding is that increasingly politically, it would tilt toward China. That has been the case of the last 10 years, despite India's influence. I think surprise is waiting for Indian government and Indian policymakers where Sheikh Hasina regime eventually moves. Too close for comfort in the sense that given this kind of relationship, there is growing discontent. As a matter of fact, I haven't seen so much of anti-Indian sentiment in Bangladesh in my entire life. I was born there. I was active there as an activist. And I've, throughout my academic career, I was a journalist following South Asia from London, working in the BBC. But I haven't seen this kind of anti-Indian sentiment, because Bangladesh seems to, a large number of Bangladeshis seem that this unequal relationship and practically supporting unqualified support, despite the fact that India knows what is going on in Bangladesh with respect to its democracy, human rights situation, and all things. That's why there is a growing, serious simmering discontent, I would call it. And the reason that I'm saying is it too close for comfort. Bangladesh is, at least a large number of Bangladesh, greater than previously, feel that it is very uncomfortable relationship. Bangladesh at this point, the unfortunate, let me start with this unfortunate part, or sort of unfortunate, that Bangladesh has never had a very organized, well thought out, long-term policy with respect to Myanmar. They live together, practically live in a neighborhood, yet they don't know each other well. And then this periodic, since 70s, we have seen the Rohingyas crossing the border. In late 70s, we saw that in early 1990s. They were repatriated. This time they have come. Nothing is happening. I don't see any possibility of the Myanmar actually taking back this refugees, more than 1 million. It is now 1.3 million. Now, the China's prodding was, we'll solve it, we'll solve it. They didn't solve it. They didn't want. So given the situation in Arakan, there are three options that Bangladesh has. One thing is they can actually support Arakan army, at least have a communication with them, formally, informally. That is one choice, because if Arakan army eventually controls that area, there is a possibility that they might actually take the Rohingyas back, which would be good for Bangladesh. The second thing could be, can align with the Indian interest, so to speak, and think that, okay, victory of Arakan army is not a good idea. Let's try to not help them, push them back or something. That would annoy the Rohingyas, 1.3 million Rohingyas in Bangladesh. Who wants to create a problem here? No prudent person. The third would be to work with Myanmar government. At the official level, they will have to work with Myanmar government. There's no doubt in it, But these are the choices that they have at this point. And I'm afraid that, despite the urgency, and the time is running out, quickly time is running out, there hasn't been any, well thought out plan to work it out. If they're waiting for India to make that decision and align with India and go along that, that might actually be detrimental to the national interest. And India has not come, very much supportive of these Rohingya issues. They have managed, they have put their eggs in Myanmar's junta, and subsequently that is the business and security interest. I understand that. I understand India's national security, determines that. They will do their national security, right? India is not a charity organization, neither should be Bangladesh. Everyone pursues their national interest. That is called realism in international relation, however we put it.